If you have an agency, you're going to want to watch this video because it's going to go over one of the most effective ways to turn subscribers into clients. And this is with an email newsletter. At my last agency, I had almost 400,000 active subscribers on my email newsletter. And active meaning within the last 30 days they've opened or clicked. So you think about that. If 400,000 people are on your list and 1% of them buy a product that's $100, that's $400,000 in revenue. If you do that 4 times a year, that's $1.6 million. And that's just an example. Or if you have 400,000 and just 0.1% of them convert into clients each month, that's 400 new clients per month, or 400 calls if you want to say 0.1% go into a call. So it's very, very effective. One of the only guarantees in life is that as your email list and newsletter get bigger, you're going to make more money. Very few other guarantees than that. Taxes, death, and you make more money if your email list gets bigger. So it's very, very important. So let's get to it right here. This is where the newsletter is in your funnel. It is a conversion mechanism, and it's a great way to determine who's qualified and who's not. And you can do that in a variety of ways. If you determine people aren't qualified, you can promote your products. You can refer them to other businesses. You could sell a course in your newsletter, a program, or you could, of course, do the normal stuff and eventually get them onto a sales call. Very, 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 very effective. So how do you get people on the newsletter? That's a question worth mentioning on. So you might run paid ads to a lead magnet. They fill out the lead magnet, put their email information in there, and now they're on your newsletter kind of automatically because you have their email address and they're on your email flows. They're just automatically there. Or a YouTube video like this one. You might have a form like this. If they submit this form, they're also on your newsletter. So it's very important. That's where these subscribers come from. It should be obvious, but it's not, judging by the amount of messages and comments I get. How could I make a newsletter if I have no subscribers? And I do just want to shake my head at those comments, but at the same time, I'm going to answer the question. So what are the big details? This is what we need to have for our newsletter. It's the same as our, rules for our lead magnets, the VAR formula: value, actionable, and readable. Even though the newsletter is essentially a free post that you're sending to them, would you honestly pay $50 to read it? That is something that you should ask yourself before you send every newsletter. Is there great content? Is there great ideas, etc.? The second thing is it actionable? And being actionable and being readable also are two of the 3 things that make something valuable in terms of the newsletter. So it's very important that, when you are going for this $50 value thing, even though it's free, if you have a very good actionable plan inside and it's very readable, those are going to help, as opposed to, just trying to make $50 worth of valuable content on your own. So an actionable newsletter has a plan that they can implement within 24 hours of reading it. It doesn't have to be a crazy in-depth plan, but some sort of plan, some clear steps to take. A lot of people think of the call to action as, book a call or something. In the newsletter, a great call to action is take these next steps, because your newsletter is not going to be the only conversion mechanism they're part of. In some ways, they're on your newsletter. You don't really even have to sell, because they're going to be in your group. Your appointment setter is going to be reaching out. They're going to be seeing your long form content. Maybe you could cross promote a webinar or something in there. So the point of the newsletter, in my view, is not to hardcore sell them. A newsletter is a very intimate way to get in the mind of someone, and it's kind of you're speaking to them directly, one-on-one through writing. It's you're in their inbox. It's not like they're on YouTube or something. It's kind of very personal, even though you're sending it in mass. And then the last thing is readable, and 1 headline per idea, and frequently use of divider lines or horizontal rule or whatever they're called in your specific email software. The reasons that newsletters fail for agencies, the first big thing is they're not sent frequently enough. If I ask you, like, what are you doing for your newsletter, and you tell me you have one, and then I say, okay, like, tell me about it, and you say we send it quarterly, like, that really just makes me fly off the rails. Like, I don't really care that much about your business, to be honest, unless you're a client of mine. But like, it's not going to work if you send it quarterly or even monthly. It has to be at minimum 3 times per week. And I aim for 5 times per week, Monday to Friday. When you set it up properly, you can make newsletters in like 20 minutes, and they can be very valuable, actionable, and readable. And I'll show you that in this in a couple minutes in this video. So we need to have it 3 times per week at a minimum, because if we have it any fewer than that, people are not really going to remember. And if you think of each newsletter as a touch point, and each newsletter or each touch point brings someone closer to a sale, even once a week is 52 weeks for someone to, if the sales cycle was 1 year, or that you needed, 1 year's worth of touch points. If you have that 3 times per week, you cut the sales cycle in thirds, etc. If you do it 5 times per week, in fifths. And I know that's not a perfect way to explain it, but hopefully that makes sense. The second reason they fail is they're too hard to read. Massive walls of text, just no headlines, no horizontal line breaks, just like no bullet points, just kind of terrible. Doesn't matter how actionable and how valuable it is if it's not readable. And this is one of the main reasons that newsletters fail. And by fail, I kind of mean they don't get you clients for your agency. And the last one is they just suck. And that's self-explanatory, little to no value, no actionable stuff, hard to read. In many cases, when you first want to launch your newsletter, you want to kind of think of things that your target audience would want to see to make it easier on yourself. You want to make your newsletter format, the sections in it, the content you're writing about, inherently interesting, because that will make it less likely that it just sucks. And if your newsletter just sucks, that's kind of a knowledge and a skill issue. If you don't know enough to write a great newsletter, it probably will suck. And there's no solution to that besides get better. Not exactly inspiring advice, but that is the truth. And in my view, if someone tells you something different, like you're going to have a newsletter course that, gets you from, the best newsletter ever in 90 days, that's probably lying to you / unrealistic. So let's get into it, because when I say like it's not frequent enough, like, oh my God, how could I write that Monday to Friday? Or, how am I going to make it easy to read every single time, especially if I'm doing it too much? Or how am I going to come up with content every time so it doesn't just suck? Very good questions. Very, very good questions. And the way you make it not suck and the way you make it efficient is you come up with different sections for your newsletter. These are going to be pre-made sections. The content is going to be unique for each, but they're going to be the same every time. So you just can duplicate. Once you've made this template or format, you duplicate it and just make the same format every single time. And this will speed up the process by 500% once you really get going, because your writing methods, your data collection methods, etc., are going to be the exact same and can become very efficient. So let's get into each section here. The first section is going to be a summary section. And to be clear, you probably wouldn't, you can put the word summary there, but this is mostly just to differentiate between the sections, but whatever. So in this email newsletter here, I made an example for it because, it'd be better if there was an example as opposed to just telling you what to do. So this is for an e-commerce email marketing brand that are doing, brands between 1 to 5 million a year, a year in revenue. Sorry, I'm just thinking back to when I actually made this here. So this is the summary. The whole purpose of the summary, let's just get some sticky notes here, is to, give them a TLDR version, a too long didn't read, where even if they, didn't read it, they should kind of get the gist of it from the summary. The second reason is you want to hook them in and get them to read more, similar to a hook on an ad creative or a hook on whatever. The summary will be the hook, and the more interesting the hook is, the more likely people will read it. And then in the summary, you kind of want to Tell them how quick plus easy it is to read. And in this case, like my version of that is it'll take approximately 4 minutes to read. Like people think, oh, even if it always took 4 minutes to read, like it's not necessarily, saying it has to be 4 minutes. Even if it took 4 minutes, the fact that you say that, in my view and my experience, because I have big newsletters, trust me. I'm not going to go over them in this video, but just the fact that you're adding that really increases the overall, amount of people that read it. You can track that. And the last thing your summary should do is I'm not going to put at the bottom, but you put it at the bottom here, promotes your conversion mechanism that you want to promote right now. So in this case, like the summary is at the very top of the email, right? Or the newsletter. There's no, there's no guarantee that someone's going to read the entire thing, because here's like the entire thing. We'll go over it after. But if they open it, they are going to read the summary part. Like that is going to be visible on loading. So we just kind of want to make sure. And it goes back to what I said about your newsletter should mostly be used to promote your other conversion mechanisms and nurture them, not really sales. So if you can promote your live workshops, you can promote your webinars, your community and group, your content, etc. at the very top of each newsletter. This is why it's very valuable to send it, 5 times per week instead of once, because you can promote all of your conversion mechanisms every week instead of just, take you a couple months to do that. If you did it once a week, it's very, very important to do that. And I really like to have my links like this, not the full link, not, highlighting this to, highlighting the whole thing like some people would do, but I like to put link and then in brackets, or you could put click here as well, but I usually put link. So those are the 4 things that you have to do in the summary section. TLDR, hook, tell them how quick and easy it is to read right here, and then promote your conversion mechanism. So I just had a couple examples. Like this would be probably interesting to someone who owns an e-commerce brand. Amazing examples from Fashion Nova and Gymshark that probably make you want to read the rest of the newsletter. The number one thing that e-com brands need to do to lower their CPA, and that's probably another interesting thing that e-com brands would want to know. So let's get into the second section. And this is going to be the actionable tip section, because remember, one of the 3 things is it actionable or not? So what you want to do in this section, and you obviously wouldn't put like this stuff in there. You probably have a different headline there, but I just did it for the video. Like you want to tell them, something what they need to do. So in this case is, the what they need to do. Always focus on the first paragraph and or sentence of your email newsletter for your brand. Why? Because that is largely what will determine whether they keep reading it or not. How? Do these 3 things in the first sentence of your email, and then you'd fill it out, thing number 1, thing number 2, and then thing number 3. So you could make this a little bit less simple, right? It's kind of an overly simple way to do it. You could make this like preferably a paragraph speaking proper English as opposed to broken up like this, but I hope you get the point. Very important that you have one actionable tip per thing, because think about it, if they're start taking your advice, that's very authority building, and if your advice can help them get some quick easy wins, they're going to trust you, much more likely to become your client. This is one of my favorite sections, and it's a section where I call it like the best links of the day, stuff of the day, whatever. And it's very, very important because you can make a very valuable newsletter by, without having to, like this is, 1, 2, if you had 1 to 3 for each of these, let's just say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. That's like 10 different things you'd have to write, versus you can curate a little bit. You're not only curating it because you're going to still have original content that's your own and your actionable tips and stuff. But if you can do it like this, where you can say, here's an amazing email design from someone else. Check out my free email masterclass. This should link to your own YouTube in this case. Avoid these copywriting mistakes. Link to your own Twitter. 25 awesome email designs. Maybe you posted that on LinkedIn. So kind of the strategy here is to speed up the newsletter, like the time it takes to create, with valuable content. That's number one. The second one is bonus points if you can link to your own content, like on Twitter, on other platforms. That's a very strong thing to do. You get followers on every platform that way. And then the third thing is, this is something that people will love. If you can curate a great thing every single day or every time you send your newsletter, people are going to look forward to opening it. It's just a great section that gets high engagement and people love it. And think about it. A lot of people are going to click these links, and that's going to, it might not, it's not really the same thing as clicking a link to book in a call, of course, but the massive click-through rate these kind of sections get are going to essentially, very much increase your deliverability. And over time, almost none of your emails are going to go to spam, because if you're going to get 10 to 15% open rate with a section like this, which does happen, you're kind of off to the races, in my opinion. So this is the best link section. Bonus points if you're linking to your own stuff. The deep dive section is kind of some in-depth knowledge, a case study, a training, or whatever. It's kind of like something that you're writing about in depth, of course. I guess that's kind of obvious with the title deep dive, but something that you're writing about they're going to find valuable. Long form piece of content. This will probably be the thing that takes the most time. I didn't write any examples here. I just have some lorem ipsum, but you want to make sure you make it readable still, right? You have H2 headlines in between pretty much every couple paragraphs or even fewer. Just make it readable. Like, that's so important. If there was not these headlines and line breaks in here, no one is going to read it. Doesn't matter how good you write it. Always overuse headlines and stuff and line breaks as opposed to underuse them or don't use them at all. It's just so important. And I think you should just take my word for it. It's going to make it a lot better. Just do it. The next section is a how I can help you section. So this is very good to promote all of your links. Remember, you're promoting your kind of most important link here because that's the only thing that people are guaranteed to see. But down here is when you promote like all of your stuff. Apply to work with my agency. You can download my templates for $97, join my community, sign up for my webinar, or just reply to this email. And I made a typo there. So this is very important because if they like your newsletter, they read every day. Like, this is just a directory of links that they can kind of be reminded of every single day. It's very important. The second last section is going to be a poll, very important for feedback. So this can think of this as like, this is 5 stars, this is 3, this is 1. And it's very important to collect feedback. You want to get obviously as high as possible as like, I love this, but you do want to get 70, 80, 90% to give you a real benchmark. And if you're getting less than that, you probably need to work on the quality of your newsletter, especially when you get a bunch of subscribers. Because if you have like 50 subscribers, like the sample size of this feedback is not going to be great. But once you get to like 50,000, which is very possible, trust me, especially over the course of 6 months or a year when you have this full funnel, like, you're going to get pretty accurate feedback for how good each newsletter is. And this is going to vary per newsletter. So you kind of, if you have like 10 newsletters and, 80% or 6 of them have 80 to 90% loved it, you might like take that as feedback. What did I do in these newsletters that makes them so good, and try to replicate that. The referral program is, so basically a referral program is like, you can get people to refer your newsletter, and if like 10 people do it or 3 people do it or whatever you decide, basically, like, you can give them an automated reward. So that's kind of like an incentive for them to help you grow. So here's like Beehive's referral program has a built-in one. So, let's see what we can find here. So like if someone creates or someone refers 3 people to your newsletter, they'd have their own link that's tracked. They can get a newsletter, and it would keep track of them in Beehive automatically or whatever. If you don't use Beehive, I don't know how to set it up because I use Beehive, but keep track of it. And you can really get like, if you do this right, and the key here is to make something that's inherently valuable and very desirable to your target audience. Like that's the main leverage point that makes this good or bad. If you choose the wrong thing, it's not going to work that well. But if you choose the right thing, you can get like 25% of your total subscribers come from this referral program. So it's very important that you get it right. So those are the sections, and this is what it will look like when it's all put together. You have your summary, you have your actionable tip, you have your best links, you have your deep dive, you have how I can help you, your poll, and your referral program. So what you do is you basically duplicate this template every day and fill it out every day, something new. If you are, doing this Monday to Friday, probably have less links than if you were doing it once a week, just because there's less work, or it's more work to do, less new news because you keep emailing them every day. There's only so many design copywriting examples, offers, and news in the case of this hypothetical email marketing agency for e-com brands. So the more you do it, the less you'd have in each section. The more you do it, the less you'd have for your deep dive, versus if you did it once a week, you'd probably make it a lot bigger. But everything is going to be perfect when you have this kind of format. It kind of combines all of the best formats and like sections from every newsletter into one. And it's absolutely perfect for agencies. So I hope this video was valuable, and I'll see you in the next one.